All right, so it is 6 o'clock, so I'll call to order this special meeting of all boards of the town of Canandaigua. And welcome everyone. Do that a little more officially in a second, but we'll begin tonight's meeting by the same Pledge of Allegiance. I will lead it. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, well, I'd like to, before I turn the time over to Shauna to work her magic, I just wanted to thank everybody for taking time out of their busy schedules to come in and meet. This is something that we've tried to have in the works for quite a while, and we were finally able to put it together, and I'm hoping that going forward, we can make this an annual meeting where we can meet, talk about our goals, see how we're reaching the goals, and get to see each other. We don't always get to see each other face to face, and have the opportunity to discuss how we feel that things are going. So we're on the same page going forward with the projects that we have and the activities that we have going throughout the town. And again, thank you all for your service and your dedication to the town and its residents. Thank you very much for that. And now I'll turn the time over to Sean.
Great, thank you, Jared. Thank you all for being here. I work closely with many of these boards, so I'm happy to see you all in the same room. We were going to do a icebreaker, if you will, because I don't think everybody maybe doesn't know each other. Mark and Scott are both new on the planning board. Shannon is brand new on the zoning board of appeals. So I thought that we could go
Karen
through and forget Zoomer. Hi, Amanda. Amanda's on our planning board. Pat's on our ECB. John is our secretary and takes the most amazing minutes. Thank you, John, for all you do for all of our boards. Gary Kopersberger, see? He's up there. Hi, Gary.
Hi.
Hi, nice to yeah, right. So if we could go, I wanted to start with Shannon Chevier. You've been, I know, I'm really good at saying the last name.
You did.
Yep. If you want to introduce yourself, what board you sit on, and tell us one of your favorite things about the town. Not going to say global Canandaigua, the town of Canandaigua, as a fairly new resident.
Right. So I'm Shannon Chevier, newly the zoning board alternate. I've been to a meeting, so really new. We moved to Canandaigua, my family and I, about 2.5 years ago. We moved in March of 2020, so then you all promptly shut down and we had no contact with anybody. We're on Buffalo Street Extension, we're the log house, basically right across from the town park. So we love it here. We moved from Greece and are thrilled to be away from the city, and we love the land we're on. We love the creek that runs through. We love the convenience of everything. We love driving through the countryside. It's just been a very pleasant move for us.
Great, thank you.
Chip Saylor, I've been on the zoning board about 20 years, I think now. Became the chairman this January, and I've lived here for 35 years. So obviously love the family.
All right, Jared Simpson, town supervisor since January of 2022. I was on the town board for a couple of years prior to that. I love Canandaigua so much that I stayed here and didn't go anywhere else. Born and raised here, and I love our space, and I love the farming and the green space and the openness that we have. And again, I love the farming area so much that I moved, like, I don't know, 500 feet or a quarter mile up the hill from where I grew up, so I can still see those same places every day. And it's quite a blessing to be able to do that.
Karen.
I'm Karen DeMay, and I've been on the town board since about February 1st. We've lived here for almost 39 years. I've either worked or lived in the town and the city of Canandaigua. I don't know how to get out of it anymore. I love it so much. We live in a great neighborhood. Middle Cheshire Road is busy, but right around us, people are close, so it's good.
I'm Bob Hilliard, different background, I guess more of a gypsy than everybody else.
And
10,
you're on zoning board.
yeah, right,
Yes.
on the zoning board. Moved 10 times by 10th grade, and since I've been married for 50 years, we probably moved 10 times. And of all the places I've ever lived, this is the best. And it's not just the town itself, but it's the unique personalities that have stepped up that I've seen in action. Doug is certainly one of those people that makes this town really click. I appreciate that.
I'm Adeline Rudolph. I also, believe it or not, I'm a transplant. You may not know this, but we moved here 40 years ago this fall. And I'm on the town board, was elected last year, so I predate Karen by a month. And I love living in Canandaigua as well. And like you said, the more I travel, the more I realize this is the best place to be. So happy to be here. Oh, I'm on the ECB as well, sorry.
Chuck Euler, Chairman of the Planning Board. I moved here 15 years ago from Philadelphia, suburban Philadelphia area. So what I appreciate most about the town and surroundings is the peace, the solitude, the pace of life, less traffic. I mean, I think I've gotten better looking just living here. I think it has something to do, I haven't grown any hair, but I really appreciated that, and I hopefully we can keep it that way.
It's all the volunteer work. Keeps me going.
I'm Terry Connolly. I've been associated with the town, I guess, most of the century so far. I've been on the town board. Quite as long as Chuck. I'm in my fourth term on the town board now. I'm deputy town supervisor and chairman of the Planning and Public Works Committee. We moved to Canandaigua in 1973, the city. We lived there until 1984. We moved out to the end of Middle Cheshire Road in 1984. So I don't know to move anyplace else. It was great. Over here, and as they say, it's a chosen spot or chosen place, whichever you subscribe to. So it's great here. So hope to make it even better in the future.
Hi, I'm Bob LaCourse. I'm a vice chair on the planning board. I've been here in Canandaigua 10 years. It took 27 years in the military to figure out where I wanted to live in my life. And it was here. Family's here, so that's why we moved back here. We have up on Johnson Road. A lot of people in Middle Chester near us. It's really quiet there. I just love walking out my back door and seeing nobody. Hearing nobody. It's just really quiet. That's what I love about here.
I'm Scott Neal, I'm on the planning board. I've lived here almost 2 years. Always loved Canandaigua. I grew up in Sodas Point, so water, country, farms. It's a natural fit, but it's closer to my Bev and Rochester as well. So it's a blessing. I love it, and I plan on making my roots here for many more years.
Mark Tolbert, Planning Board. Lived in Canandaigua for 8 years. Lived in Ontario County almost all of my life. Brought my companies and things back here. This area is easy to live in. Having traveled so many places, it's easy. Quality of life is amazing. The lake is cherished. It's something that we have. And I love the fact that it gives a mix of both. So we're year round down here as well. And in the winter, we've got solitude. In the summer, we've got action. So there's a lot of, and then all of the rural character around us. It's just, it reminds me what I grew up in, because I grew up mostly in Victor. But yeah, easy, quality of life.
My name is John Casey. I hope to be on the town board come January 1st of this coming year. I'll be a candidate on the ballot. I've been here since 1991. I am probably, besides Mick Jagger, the oldest parent of 12-year-olds. So if you see me on the phone, no, they are not my grandchildren. What do I like about Canandaigua? Everything everyone has said. I mean, it's just at the show at Fleetback the other night, and we were seeing Robert Plant and Allison Krause, and I was just saying to my wife, it's pretty amazing that, you know, we can come to this wonderful venue, it's 10 minutes from home. And in the wintertime, I can drive over to Bristol, it's 15 minutes away, take the kids skiing. And we play ball, the kids do all year long, and we get to enjoy the lake in our front yard. And it's, I mean, how's it getting better than that? You know, I see people living in Coeur d'Alene. I see people living in Tahoe, or people living in Lake George. And I do consider all three of those places, including Saratoga and Skinny Atlas. I'll throw those two in. Peers of ours in a way. But I think that our quality of life is every bit as good as theirs. I mean, we got a casino 40 minutes down the road if you care to play or take friends there or whatever. It's just everything about it is just really fantastic. And comparing it to all those other places, our cost of living is a heck of a lot less expensive than those other places that I mentioned. So I just love it here. I try to contribute as much as I can and give back to the community. Because I'm in a position now in a place where I can afford to do that. And that's what I choose to do. And I've chosen to be married here, raise my family here, and invest pretty significantly in the areas. That's my shtick, and I'm sticking to it.
Thank you. I'm Shauna Bonchak, been here now for a year. Yep. So I've lived in the town since 2008. I moved back here from Baltimore, where I lived for about 8 years. Decided that this is the place that I wanted to raise my family. And it's, you mentioned the variety, everybody's kind of said that, and it's just an example. This weekend, we were trying to figure out which park we would go to, and there's so many. When you have a family, there's so, do we want to go to Onondaga to swim? Do we want to go to the pirate park? Maybe we'll go to Pierce Park and play in the creek. There's just so many options as a parent, and I just think that the quality of life, because that's where I am right now, raising my family, is you just can't find it anywhere else.
So my name is Dr. Finch. I've lived in Canandaigua since 1995. I have spent the night in 47 states, 7 countries, traveled extensively, and I still get excited every time I come home to Canandaigua. It's a very unique place. It's a very special place. And seeing that firsthand by doing so much traveling and experiencing so many other areas and so many cultures, it's really very, very touching. And exactly what everybody has said, there's all the different aspects. It's the variety, it's the quality of life, we have the rural areas, we have the agriculture areas, but we also have industry, we also have manufacturing. It's such an honor for the last 8 years to be able to represent the town of Canandaigua. And when I go someplace, or I'm speaking, I'm also on the New York Planning Board of Directors for the New York Planning Federation, when I'm speaking about all the different things, there's so many other municipalities that constantly will say stuff to me like, I can't believe all the stuff that you talk about that Canandaigua has. You have the mixed use, you have all these different things. Most municipalities don't have the diversity that we do with the industrial and all the different things. So we're very fortunate. It certainly makes Canandaigua very, very unique and very special.
I'm Kimberly Burkhardt. I'm with the ECB board, and I've been a lifelong resident of Ontario County. And we took keys to our house on September 11th. Yes, it was that September 11th. And so I can never forget when I became a Canandaigua resident. But we looked all over for houses. We were both working for Rochester companies, Kodak and Xerox. But this really wound up being the place that we wanted to live.
Let's go. Yeah, let's see. We'll start with John. We gotta meet John.
John, if you'd like to share.
Yeah, I'm here. I've lived in Canandaigua for about 23 years. I came from Monroe County. I retired about 10 years ago from the University of Rochester. I was in marketing and communications and had the opportunity to work for the planning board for the past about 7 years now. So I've been at meetings since 2015, taking the minutes, and also at the PRC meeting. And I just want to say that the town is really fortunate to have members of the boards, the zoning board, planning board, ECB, CIC, all of the people who live in the town who are willing to serve as volunteers on all the boards that we have. And I appreciate the opportunity to be with the planning board. So thanks very much.
Thank you, John. Gary?
Me?
Or, I think we muted Gary.
Okay,
Let me know.
I'll start. Okay. So I'm on the ECB for the past couple of years. Like Doug, I moved to the Canandaigua area in 1995, coming up from Durham, North Carolina. I think Chip also moved up here from Duke, although a few years before I got here. A beautiful place to live. I echo all the sentiments that have already been expressed. And a great place to raise children, for sure. I feel fortunate being here and really have enjoyed my time on the board.
Thank you, Gary. Pat, since you're unmuted.
Yes, can y'all hear me? Hi, good evening. I'm Pat Venezia. I have been a Canandaigua resident since 1986. My family and I operate a local business. We happen to be a land surveying and civil engineering company. We raised our children in Canandaigua. They were 5 and 3 when we moved here. Canandaigua is a wonderful place to raise a family. It truly is the chosen spot. And I care very much about my town. I love my town, which is why I am on the ECB and also the CIC, just to try to be helpful and support all the doings our town is involved in. Thanks all.
Thank you, Pat. Amanda.
Hi, everyone. My name's Amanda Van Laken, planning board member. Joined the planning board in 2020, right before the pandemic, give or take. Moved to Canandaigua in 2018 and purchased our home on Ketchum Road in early 2019. I guess I don't think I could say anything new and significant that hasn't already said about why Canandaigua, but just like to echo what everyone has said, the seclusion, the convenience, the mixture, the diversity of Canandaigua has really brought me in, and I appreciate everyone listening. Thanks.
Thank you. Sure. Would you like to share? You don't
Okay.
have to. We don't.
I'm Joan Taylor Bistek, and I came to the planning meeting. I saw it, it came to my email box.
Okay, good.
And I own a little over 270 acres in the corner of the Michigan and Farmington Town Line Road. And of course, I inherited it. And I'm just looking to see what your plans are for development, or right now it's agricultural. I lease it to the local farmer. And I just kind of interested to see what you have to say.
Well, thank you. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Hi, Jim.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm quite
Good to
well. How are
see
you?
Good.
James Meyer. I am not a member of any boards. Own a piece of land off of Fire Hall Road, which has an application pending in front of the planning board, and hopefully it will wind its way through the town board. Actually, great place to start. Sean and I have had a lot of discussions on connections, which is kind of what brought me to here. We used to build sidewalks and call it a day. Now it's more about bike lanes and scooters. I just got back from a trip in Boston where during the commuting times, you'll see these bike lanes actually getting quite congested with electric scooters going back and forth. What a great way to improve quality of life by making a connection from developments to businesses to the city proper, of that nature. And I just thought I would stop in and see what's going on.
Well,
Thank you for
We
being
appreciate you
town
coming.
members.
So everyone should have a copy of the PowerPoint, and the plan tonight is to go through and talk about where we are and where we are as related to the 2022 strategic goals that were set. I think it was September that we had our meeting. Yeah. of last year. And we really have been keeping these goals at the top of many, many agendas. They are a part of the CIC agenda, which Tim prepared for us. Doug puts them in his reports. They're top of mind and very important. So our purpose would be to go through each one, to tell you our successes. And at the end, you all have a form, and just to be mindful of, we want to get your opinion on where you think we are. Give the town a grade for each goal, where we're at as of June.
You don't have to put your name on it.
Yeah,
It
can be anonymous.
Anonymous grading.
Right, so we would like to, in your valued members of our board, we really appreciate your insight.
So Shauna, if I can, just as we go through this, everybody, this is meant to be a very open dialogue. Jump in, ask questions. This isn't meant to be formal intentionally. This is designed to be very informal. Ask questions, we'll talk about stuff and keep the dialogue going.
It's ag. Okay, all right, so the first goal, I'm just gonna read it quick. Encourage agricultural use of viable farmland and discourage development of those parcels by directing developers to more appropriate locations within the town, such as the 3 identified growth nodes. Does everybody know where those growth nodes are in the town? Yes.
No, why don't you read it?
Okay, right, so I'm wondering, yeah, absolutely. Our principal growth node would be Uptown Canandaigua. That is where we are really focusing on pushing development away from the rural protected areas and into the more dense spaces in Uptown Canandaigua. We have MUO3, I'll start with MUO3, which is down by the college. The piece of land, some know as Canandaigua Shores, or now Sunset Ridge, is part of MUO3. It's a designated growth area for the town. It also goes up north to Starsider, all the way up to all the way.
County Road 46.
Yeah, it's a significant area of the town.
Yeah, so when you think about this goal, this goal is really telling us 2 things. It's telling us supporting agriculture use of viable farmland, but it's also protecting a whole lot of the town that has natural resources, right? So like if you look at the room at the end of the hallway that I know a lot of us meet in for different work sessions and committees, that has a ton of maps in it that have natural resources, that have blue line streams, it has the scenic view shed overlay, it has the strategic farmland protection area, it has the Bountiful Brook Greenway, it has all those different things in it. And those are all actually all on the website. You go to the website under the development office page, right? There's all kinds of maps, land use planning maps. You can see all those same maps. They're all on our town website. But when you look at that map, and specifically somebody has the strategic forest protection area, you start to see these 3 growth nodes that Sean was talking about that are not identified in those protected areas because they don't have the same level of natural resources that other portions of the town have. When you talk about the trees and you talk about the ecological communities and all those things that we've spent the time mapping out. So MUO3, as Sean was saying, is the easternmost portion of the town of Canandaigua. That's the eastern node coming into the town of Canandaigua from Hopewell, coming in from the town of Gorham, 364 up to County Road 46, crossing over 5 and 20 Macquarie. And then MUO1 started out as a much larger area from Tops basically up to Randy's GMC dealership on both sides of 332, and we've really refocused that into the uptown area in the form-based code. And then MUO2 is a very small area that is the northernmost gateway to the town of Canandaigua, coming in from the town of Farmington. And it basically goes, it's the area where Ace Hardware is, right along 332, down to where Stella's Florist is on 332. That's the beginning and the end. It's a very small area that really, it goes to the east just a little bit on the east side of 332, but it really doesn't go any much farther on the west. It really is just that that very micro-focused area as the growth node there. So those are the three primary growth nodes that we've identified for development in the town, with much of the rest of the town where we talk about the natural resource protection. So,
I wanted to just talk about maybe you could, well, maybe nobody from the ag board here. We have a very active ag protection or ag committee in the town, and they've been reevaluating the ag overlay, and I think it's coming up soon to the town board.
So one of the challenges, and actually, Adeline and I were talking about this earlier, we have this strategic farmland protection area, and we have this powerful greenway. But at the end of the day, if a landowner would like to develop their land in the strategic farmland protection area, they absolutely still have the ability to do it. They can make application and go through that process, whether it's conservation subdivision, whether it's a traditional subdivision. The ag committee has been very concerned about what can we do to protect those prime soils and soils of statewide significance, specifically in the town, because once they're gone, they're essentially gone. Now, we've done a decent job with PDR protection, purchase and development right protection. We've extinguished over 2,000 acres of farmland from possible future development by extinguishing those development rights with perpetual conservation easements. The majority of those are in the Paddleford Brook Greenway, and we have some maps down at the end of the hall that show those parcels where that has taken place. But the ag committee had brought forth a strategic farmland protection overlay to the ordinance committee, and it kind of got kicked back and forth around a little bit. Their most recent version, I know they meet this Friday night, is a different version of that strategic farmland protection overlay, which would essentially say, in the town of Canandaigua, we know that the majority of the prime soils are the areas actually just south of Jones property, New Michigan, Cooley, north of 5 and 20, south of 5 and 20, going down that way. And those are also where some of our largest farming operations are. So what the ag committee is going to be asking for is a version of the strategic farmland overlay that has just recently been drafted that would ask the town board to be involved before any new subdivision is approved in that area that includes the expansion of water or sewer lines. That way, at least it's not saying no, you can't do it, but at least there's another level of review, and the town board is saying yes, go ahead and do it, or no, don't go ahead and do it. So that's a very, what I would say, rough draft, and they're still working with it. One of the ongoing challenges for the ag committee, the town board, and the planning board, our conservation team is, you get a landowner, and Joan, actually, I'm glad you're here, because Joe's a perfect example. You get a landowner with a pretty significant piece of agricultural property that maybe they don't want to continue the farming, and trying to figure out what to do with it, right? Do you sell it for housing development, even though, and Joan and I have talked many times over the years, even though the family may wish to preserve it for agricultural purposes or like to see it continue in agriculture, the real estate market has changed. It becomes very difficult for farmers to come in and buy that, right? And it's about finding that balance between all of that. Can there be another use? Can there be some sort of melding of that to come up with something different? It becomes very, very challenging. And the ag committee itself, and it's made up of primarily farmers, they want to be very careful about taking away somebody's property rights to develop their parcel, right? And so that's that balance. That's that constant balance back and forth. And that's not an easy thing to grasp a hold of. And that's where the ag committee in this latest version is saying, okay, maybe we don't say that you can't, but as long as it's those prime soils, maybe the town board should be involved in that process also, just to get another set layer of review.
Any questions?
Hi, this is Veda. I do have a question. I apologize. I disconnected while you were doing the introductions, but I'm new to Canandaigua, just moved in September of 2020, September, right next to the Notre Dame Retreat House on Foster Road. Is that within the scope of this discussion?
No, well, So it's in the, I believe it's in the strategic farmland protection area, but there's nothing specific tonight relative to the conversation of that particular parcel. Let me say it that way.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for joining us.
You're welcome.
Here you started that.
Well, I was just gonna say, as far as the town board being involved in the expansion of water and sewer district, we are anyway. I mean, that has to go through the town board, so.
This specific language would grant the planning board the authority to do the subdivision, provided that the town board has said yes to those aspects.
But we would have to look at it anyway, so.
For water, not necessarily for sewer,
Well,
right? So this would be a change in that.
I think we probably would be looking into it. Anyway.
Doug, when the MUOs, when the agricultural areas, when all of those are set up, how are they determined?
The mixed use overlays were originally created as part of the 2002 comprehensive plan. It was a visioning exercise that was a very broad visioning exercise as part of that original comprehensive plan with extensive survey work that was done. And I've talked to quite a few different people that were involved in that process at that time. And they had a pretty substantial, and by that, I want to say the number that I was told was nearly 60% of the residents had weighed in during that process of that comprehensive plan. Terry, were you involved in that one?
No, just prior to my involvement, I remember that,
Yeah.
you know, the survey and the whole thing.
Yeah.
You know,
So that
it was widely.
It was.
accepted.
And we actually have some documentation, actually, I think I shared with the town board, right, a 1992 map that actually even showed the original kind of uptown NUO1 area. It had been talked about for a pretty substantial amount of time, but really was nailed down in that 2002 comprehensive plan. So that goes back 20 years now.
So it's through the comp plan.
Yes.
And is that true with the agricultural regions and things as well?
So then what happened was one of the things, the priority action goals for the comprehensive plan and comprehensive plan update. Number one action item for the 2011 comprehensive plan update was relative to agricultural protection. That was a primary focus. And so we took that in 2014 when we created the CIC in that goal of how do we implement this plan, this protecting farmland. And that's where we coalesced after a series of public meetings around creating an agriculture enhancement plan. The agriculture enhancement plan is the document that was adopted by the board in December of 2016 that actually spells out what's going on with agriculture in the town of Canandaigua, what's the future of agriculture in the town of Canandaigua. And it actually created that agriculture enhancement, that strategic farmland protection area based on the soil classifications, the conservation values. So in the back of that document, there's an index of every single parcel in the town of Canandaigua. You can see the agricultural rating for those parcels. And that's what created that map.
And that was 2014,
16,
2016.
We did also have the MUO committees, which became the Economic Development Committee, which are helping to solidify some of the ideas around the MUOs.
That's true.
So our data, the surveying and everything ranges from 2002 to 2014.
Well, 16 was the agriculture
16,
enhancement. The open space plan was updated in 19. I want to say the Parks and Rec was updated in 19. What was that one?
19.
19. So there was some updated data work that was done relative to those. But yes, generally, most of the plans, the data is coming from just prior to COVID.
Should we move on?
In our grades, are we supposed to, I mean, some of these goals are not going to be completely achieved in 1 year. Are we supposed to grade on progress or potential, or what are we looking for?
It says
Progress to date.
It says right on.
Progress made so.
So are we working in that
Also put some
direction?
comments if you want.
Well, then you'll know who I am.
Yeah, Shauna. Would you actually say that, I mean, the word encourage continued use, right? So before it even comes to a planning board level, at a PRC, would you think that that would be the place where that encouragement would begin? Or would it be before that even? Because by the time it comes to the board, I would think that it's gone through all the wickets to the point where we can't stop it unless we find something wrong with it. So in other words, where does the encouragement come from to begin with?
Well, I can tell you that from my perspective, encouragement starts when I get a call about subdividing a 33, let's say, acre parcel for, maybe taking off 5 lots of prime ag. I go through basically the NRI with anyone that calls and flag that is if they are part of the strategic farmland protection, that is noted in the zoning law determination. And again, it's a recommendation to look at the plan. Also, and then, the ag board really reviews to anything that we send after PRC over to them with they have very strong opinions about that. But in the end, it's really up to the applicant.
Yeah, let me just jump in there just for a second. So in 2016, we actually did not have an agriculture advisory committee. That was one of the implementation aspects, the action items from that agriculture enhancement plan. And so giving the agriculture community a voice, but also the review of these applications. And I think the encouragement for the agriculture use happens long before the application is ever made. It's everything from the phone calls that Shauna gets, the phone calls that I get. When we're talking about planning public works, when we're talking about water and sewer lines, trying to keep it out of development areas, in conversations, when we're having conversations about economic development, trying to keep it out of agriculture areas and trying to steer it to these other areas. This is one of these goals where I don't think we can ever say that we achieved it. It's just constantly ongoing, day in and day out. We're constantly discussing it.
Yep. With those projects, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I would think you get landowners or prospective landowners that come in and say, I have an idea for something. Or you and I have had conversations like that. I'm interested in that piece. What can I do there? Does most of it, at what point does most of it come in? Does most of it come in before they own it or after? Or is it after?
I would say most before.
I would absolutely,
Yeah.
when the option, they get approval. and
So
then
there
they
is an
buy.
opportunity to
Absolutely.
get the ability to redirect.
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
yes.
Yeah. There's many projects that you see actually under construction now in the town of Canandaigua have been redirected from agriculture areas to uptown, for instance, or other areas.
So to a comment you just made, Doug, this is ongoing. Does this then justify being goal number 1, or is this more of a maintenance issue that we have to maintain this vision?
Well, I don't think in the comprehensive plan, and Sean's got this.
Yeah, I have it listed.
One, but in the comprehensive plan, we were very specific not to call them out in any particular order. We just identified, here's the goals. And then here's the strategic initiatives for this year, right? These were the top 5 that
Right,
received
these
the
were the
highest
top 5.
votes last fall when we did the strategic planning
Yes, which
exercise.
I participated in also.
Right.
I guess my point is that this is kind of a vision of what we want the community to look like into the future. And it sounds to me, based on what you just said, it's kind of more of a maintenance. We just gotta make sure we maintain this as part of our vision. I don't see it as being something that
That we meet and then we're done.
we spend a whole lot of time.
We're never gonna check it off, more part of a vision statement
Yes.
for growth in the future of the town.
Yes.
Something with that incorporated in there.
The one thing I would say though is it takes a lot of work to continue this, right? Everything from Star Cider is another example. That's an agricultural business that we actually initiated. That was an intentional recruitment to get that business in the town of Canandaigua, support the agricultural operations of the town. Right, when we talk about some of the distilleries and some of the products, we talk about the farm markets, we talk about the it's called Fresh, whatever it is on County Road. I think it's yes, thank you. That in the town of Canandaigua, as we work with them and even continuously work on okay, are you in compliance with code and zoning or not, and all those types of things. It takes a lot of work. That stuff doesn't just happen on any given time. And so we spend a lot of time working to advance the initiative, whether or not you can say that we've achieved it at any particular time. I think that becomes challenging, but that is something that is very top of mind awareness, of course.
Second goal. And everything is very much interrelated, so it really is, I mean. Permanently protect lands with natural resource significance and support recreation on protected lands. Doug was gonna talk about our newest acquisition. I also wanted to let everyone know, and some of you are involved, our conservation easement team is up and running again. And our tip is not running.
There are many goals that, are we sharing this? Yes, no, okay. There are many goals, as Shauna said, that are interrelated, and there are many initiatives that we know what the strategic goal is. We have the feedback of the groups, the CIC, all of the stuff that allow us to execute as opportunities present themselves. And there's never been a more perfect example of this that I know of than this. Got a phone call on Mother's Day, Sunday Mother's Day, about a piece of property that had hit the real estate market on that particular day that very much fell within this goal of permanently protecting lands with natural resources and again support the recreation of those protected lands. This parcel is a fully wooded northern hardwood forest parcel, 100% wooded, with a blue lime stream, steep slopes, a natural gully, adjoining a park that I'll talk about in a second that promotes the continued expansion of recreational resources. The real estate market, as we all know, is so crazy right now. I started reaching out to town board members on Sunday afternoon after this, on Mother's Day, when this became available. Sorry, I was parent now when I interrupted your Mother's Day. Maybe something will happen on Father's Day. I can bother the rest of them. So, but the town board said, yes, move forward. By 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the owner of this property had a $65,000 offer. By the time I called them around 5 p.m., they had already had a full price offer on this particular piece of land. They listed it, it's 8 acres for $69,900. Why is this important to the town of Canandaigua? Let me show you. This is the parcel right here in green. This is Ononda Park right here. Here's the lakeside. Here's the uplands of Ononda Park. This is McJanet Park. This is the Finger Lakes Vista project with the town of Canandaigua with this trail connection that comes right down to this park here that's in green. And we have a willing landowner on the adjoining parcel to give us an easement at least to start to work our way down towards a future trail in Ononda. So this parcel, because we had this goal, we had these initiatives, we've had things like the 2010 Trails Master Plan that talked about this, and a lot of our planning documents, the support for protection of these natural resources and the encouragement of active recreation on these, was able to call the town board members and they said, yes, it fits within all the objectives. See what you can do very, very quickly. And within a matter of a couple of days, we had this parcel under contract, which we do now. We were able to move very, very quickly on that to make that happen for the acquisition of that 8 acres. So that really became a key initiative for us. This, you can see it's steep slopes here, there's streams and everything on this parcel. I think that was all the photos I have in this particular one, but that becomes a key piece of linkage for us between Janet Park, the Finger Lakes Vista project. You might remember that's a project that we did jointly with the Finger Lakes Land Trust. The town of Canandaigua put seed money of $100,000 in. We have a forever, a perpetual intermunicipal agreement, memorandum of understanding with Finger Lakes Land Trust that is available to the residents of the town of Canandaigua for active recreation on all of that land, and then now we connect down to this piece. So that's one example of many different examples that we come up in time to time, but that particular one just happened to be in fee title when we talk about conservation We talk about conservation easements that Sean was just mentioning. There are ways to do that through easements, and we explore those. And then there's ways to do it through fee title, and this is an example specifically of this one, the fee title acquisition by the town to protect that. And then the landowners in this particular case, they were super excited. A few days later, after we had signed the purchase agreement with them, they had a $100,000 cash offer on the land. Wasn't at all surprised. We had planned for that. And in this particular case, what we were able to do is work out an agreement with the landowner that any offer, bona fide offer that they got above the town's full price offer of $69.9, that we would give them a receipt for any kind of contribution of that difference. And so they were very ecstatic about that. It was a win-win situation where they'll be able to tell a little story through the trail markings of the property, of the family, the Harris family, and what they did for Canandaigua, how they used to farm a lot of this area, and how they're also able to recoup some tax benefit too. The capital gains tax benefits are able to be offset by that in-kind contribution that they're making to us. So in this particular case, it was a win-win.
Point of information, you said on the Vista, active recreation?
Yes. Yes, there is a
Okay,
beautiful trail.
fantastic.
If you have not yet hiked it, please take the time to go hike it. It is a little bit of a hike, it is a little bit steep. But from the top point of the vista, you can see Canandaigua Lake, you can see Seneca Lake. On a clear day, you can see part of Cuca Lake. You have the most unbelievable view of our new water towers in Cheshire. And you can see.
Yes, you do.
And you can see a little bit of the Rochester skyline looking towards the north. It's just an incredible view up the top of the vista.
And a beautiful stream, which is the same stream, I understand.
It comes down
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
There's the stream that crosses that property that we we're just talking about, also works its way down. And then when you talk about natural resource and water quality, that piece of property that I just showed you with that stream is the same exact stream that goes into Ananda. And we know that we have problems in Ananda with flooding, with a lot of sediment coming down. This will also give us the opportunity in the future perhaps to do some water quality improvement projects and help hold some of that back during heavy rain events before it gets to the park.
How did you say you learned?
This one came through a neighboring landowner, Paul, actually messaged me through Facebook on that Sunday. And then we had a conversation about it, and it happened just that fast. Everything just fell perfectly in alignment for that to happen that fast. That's very unusual for government to do that fast.
Do we take any active measures to identify and seek out the properties that we would want?
We do. So all of our parcels have conservation ratings. We do look at any number of different things. Obviously, the highest value ones are ones that maybe we want to look at. Traditionally, in the past, we have done that through easement acquisition, whether that's the PDR program, maybe the things like the TDR program, the open space. From time to time, the town will acquire land. More often than not, it's involved with another entity that we're working with instead of the town taking responsibility. This one is 8 acres for 69,000. You know, that's a bit more manageable than 5 million for a piece.
Did you get the easement all the way to the park now?
So we're not there yet. We're working on it. It's a work in progress, but that is the goal. Eventually. We, on this particular topic too, so we do have some other examples. We've continued over the years to explore easements and other trail linkages. We do have a 2010 Trails Master Plan along with the 2018 or 2019 Parks and Rec Master Plan that included trail connection point updates. Those of you on the planning board, that becomes in particularly critically important help that we need from you when you're looking at applications that involve a project that may identify those potential connections. Otherwise we're not able to make these trail connections and these points that the residents have requested over the years and these massive recreational connections. So it doesn't come up as much down here, but it certainly comes up more in other parts of the town. Planning board just did a great job earlier this year with the Piercebrook subdivision application. That's going to give us a linkage to Miller Park. That'll eventually get us, I have every reason to believe that'll eventually get us to the villas, which will get us to the switchback trail, really even connecting the sidewalk system to the city. Potential stuff down the road, maybe Middle Cheshire Road, down the other We also have trail connections that we've been exploring from the town hall here, the Cheshire Fire Department, Miller Park, and then from the town hall here, it'll eventually, God bless Terry, started, when did you start Auburn Trail, 2011?
Yeah.
So it's been
No,
11 years.
it was earlier.
It was earlier than that, wow. At
It's in the
least
Trails Master
longer
Plan.
than 10 years.
It's in the Trails Master Plan, the Auburn Trail.
Terry started this initiative with the towns of Victor, Farmington, Canandaigua, and the city of Canandaigua, the Auburn Trail, and we inch closer every year. But inch is the right rate.
Exactly.
But we continue to work on that. But again, those of you on the planning board, as you see applications specifically in MUO1 in Uptown, those are key points to bring in that connection. The Auburn Trail connecting down near the airport to Outhouse that then connects also to the city sidewalk system, the 22 miles of the Ontario Pathway Trail. The Auburn Trail also links to the Finger Lakes Trail, which goes all the way to Buffalo. So think this out for a second. It would be possible, maybe Dave Sauter will do it, but you could ride your bike from Buffalo to Ananda.
We'll need a jump in the lake after
Dave
that
Sauter.
one.
I don't know anybody else that can do it, but Dave Sauter could, sure. So.
I know a couple.
Move to 3.
Did you want to touch base at all on encouraging recreation on goal 2 before you leave that? No, I don't know if we're addressing that quite as much as obviously permanently protected lands, but the Parks Committee, I know it's been expanding some recreation programs. Parks and Park was great just this weekend. There's another opportunity to at least inform people of recreation opportunities available. I think it's something we need to keep in mind if for, the newly acquired parcel, how we can engage that with McJanet and Ononda as well for recreation, a new recreation resource, and what we can do to keep encouraging. Obviously, Motion Junction, another encouraging recreation on the town list too. So.
And our recreation programs, just side note, I mean, they're so popular. Our recreation programs, they were at 100% capacity within 2 weeks after the release date. We then expanded recreation programs for 2022, and they're again at 100% within a couple of weeks. We don't have any more vacancy in any of our recreation programs. Most of our facilities and most of our parks, the cabins at Ononda, the pavilions, they're 100% booked for all of this year and well into next year already. I just had a conversation with somebody about an event for September of 2023, and that was one of the first available dates at Ononda. So there is a huge demand. We're seeing ever increasing. The Parks and Rec Committee will be meeting hopefully with the town board in the not too distant future to talk about some plans for upland of Ononda, some improvements there, maybe some upgrading of cabins. We are anxiously awaiting the DEC to finalize the turnover of Ononda to the town. That's been a 32-year effort now, but that's getting very, very close. And we continue to invest in them now. If you haven't been down lately, we recently added metal roofs to some of the buildings that are specifically under the pine trees, that the roofs were deteriorating very, very quickly because the pine sap was eating away at the asphalt shingles. We added the game room. We've added a fire pit at the fire pit at the lakeside. We continue to make improvements there. And it's just getting rave reviews, as well as other parks. Blue Heron Park is going to be, as we talk about uptown landing in the future with the planning board. I mean, think of something like Grand Central Park in New York City with the city being built around it. I think that's what you're going to be thinking about with Uptown, with Blue Heron being the center of that. And as we really talk about the design elements that spill over from Uptown Landing into Blue Heron and vice versa. And even things like we just recently paved last year, we paved the parking lot at Blue Heron Park. We've made improvements to the pavilion. That's getting a lot more use. We made upgrades to the trails. We'll be making the trails at Outhouse, actually starting next Wednesday, I believe it is. We'll start working on ADA compliance of some of the pathways near the playground and Outhouse. Obviously, Motion Junction was a huge initiative for us. So we really continue to invest in all of those. We're getting very, very positive responses. So that leads me to, you just heard all that. That's my pitch for planning board. keep charging the $1,000 parking rec fee
Yes.
every time that
Yes.
you get a subdivision application, please.
Maybe take the price up on what the zoning. we get.
Yeah. Rent's too low.
That's too
Did you
low.
want to go up with Karen?
We can pass that down.
No. All right.
The old.
Cheaper for town.
All right, moving along. Where are we at here? 7:00.
3.
Promote housing and development growth within identified growth nodes and discourage development in environmentally sensitive areas. Revise ordinances as needed to achieve this goal. Again, very, very immersed with 1 and 2. The scenic view shed overlay is very new, and that's something that, well, an environmentally sensitive area is very subjective, but it is in our plan, and as scenic view sheds are very environmentally sensitive and also to be protected. And if you're not familiar with our scenic view shed overlay, it really, I should have brought maps in today. I thought that like 5 times. But there's a map, the purple map we call it, that identifies parcels that are visible from Canandaigua Lake. And what we've done is we've put a overlay basically on top of those to discourage them from being kind of cut up or sliced up into very small lots. We have a 1 acre minimum. And that's actually, September, October, it was in place, in November. It's very new. So that's actually really something that's substantial that we've done with that.
Maybe for the good of the group, I know it came up with our last planning board meeting. Was the science or lack of science involved in developing the
behind
purple
the-
map? That was Lobella did, and Doug, maybe you know the history.
Sure. So it really stems from the open space plan. The open space plan that was adopted by the town board in 2018, I think it was. The open space initiative actually was originally started by the Environmental Conservation Board many, many years ago. There was a original version, I think, from 2006. And the ECB pushed very, very hard for a need for additional natural resource protection in the town code. There was the NRI section of town code that was updated. There was the steep slopes. And then this open space plan was done that was inclusive of the scenic view sheds and identified certain key points. It then identified any number of different things, the ecological communities, that's how we ended up with the strategic forest protection area. It really kind of encompassed a lot on a much broader schedule analysis all over the town. The back of, I should have pulled it up, but the back of that open space index, identical to the agriculture enhancement plan. You can see the tax map number for every single parcel in the town of Canandaigua over, I want to say it's over 7 acres, plus or minus. That then shows you a series of value ratings for that particular parcel based on the categories that they were looking at, and then comes up with total overall conservation value. The scenic view, and I know Mark has certainly been looking at this, the scenic view shed map was a map that was created at the request of the ECB and former chairwoman Joyce Marthaler from, I think it was 8 key initiatives or 8 key points in the lake in what you would see essentially from the lake looking at the parcels in the town of Canandaigua. And then the scenic view shed overlay was a derivative of that. Next, I think the ordinance committee spent many, many months, maybe even
Oh,
years.
yeah, it evolved from ridgeline guidelines
Right.
to ridgelines or local law. Then it was, okay, how do we define a ridgeline?
Actually,
And
now
then
that you said that, where's even
we had
fucking
to
color?
establish something.
Right, yeah.
And we felt that the purple map provided some sort of mechanism
Right.
to allow us to control growth in the hillside.
And actually, after you said that, I remember there was years ago, we had a very broad meeting like this, a joint meeting of all the boards. And we were talking about those ridgeline laws at the time, because we had ridgeline guidelines, but then we were talking about ridgeline laws that would even say, okay, you can't have these types of colors above this elevation and any number of different things, and it became so difficult to enforce and really impossible to enforce that the scaled down version, like what is something that we can adopt is much simpler and really is designed intentionally to give the planning board maximum flexibility as you're looking at it.
Don, can you talk a little bit about the two differences between the overlay, map 4, I think it is, and map 5, the purple. Map 5, the purple covers a lot more space.
Yes.
Versus the overlay that says the area south of 5 and 20 is to be maintained.
Yes.
In a way that it doesn't interrupt the view.
Yes.
I brought this up the other time and before again. There are areas in that purple that can't be seen by the lake. I have a prime example. My property is in the purple. I cannot see the lake. So how do we manage planning, or is it more of a, do we stop the height of vehicle or buildings? Because you can't see it at the ground level, but you can see it at X high level. So it's hard to fathom on how I'm going to control what gets built in the area, because purple is bigger than the overlay. You should.
So the map itself, like I said, was based on those key points when that was created at the request of the Environmental Conservation Board. And that's the purple map that we call, right? And so the ordinance committee, when we talked about that, there are areas on the purple map. There are areas up near me. Actually, Joan, I know your property may even be on the purple map that's partially visible from the lake. You'd have to go pretty high to see it from, because I live up near Joan's property. You'd have to go pretty high to see the lake from our areas. So that's why it said south of 5 and 20. So immediately it said, okay. Well, that was data that suggested that those are seeable at some point, we're going to exclude everything north of 5 and 20. So that's what the discussion was with the ordinance committee. You guys on the ordinance committee jump in here if I'm wrong, right? So then it went, okay, so south of 5 and 20, the purpose of the scenic viewshed overlay is the purpose of the scenic viewshed overlay to provide supplemental regulations to the underlying zoning district that are located within the mapped area, that's the purple area, right? To support the protection of town of Canandaigua natural resources. The intent grants authorization to the planning board to enable development or subdivision in a manner which shall protect the natural resources. Enable, right? So it's not saying that you have to, it's giving the planning board specifically that flexibility. It doesn't say that you absolutely cannot allow this or you cannot allow that, right? It does say minimum lot size, 1 acre, that's intentional. Use of conservation subdivision, you can't do that, right? So conservation subdivision, for those of you who don't know. And so I wanted to, let's say I want to do a conservation subdivision, I want to cluster. And let's say I have 10 acres that I can build 10 houses on, let's pretend it's in the scenic viewshed overlay. I could come in with an application and say, hey, this is an environmentally sensitive area. I want to protect 5 acres, but in turn I want to build 15 houses essentially, right? That's conservation subdivision. So what the scenic viewshed overlay says is you cannot do that. You cannot do the conservation subdivision. But the rest of it really is designed so that the planning board has that flexibility. So Bob, to answer your question, that point, that's up to you guys.
That's right. That's what I wanted to from you.
I can add something to that too. In the discussions when we were more global and on the ordinance committee, we weren't just looking at one time at vistas, just from the lake to the land to the lake, but also down going south down the valley. And one of the interesting things that came up was when Morel built on this, expanded their building on top of this knob. Some people took a burn about that. They didn't see that coming. So that wasn't obstructing the view of the lake, but there are quite a few vistas that don't include the lake. So at one time we were looking at that. How do you control for it and all that? We saw that when the devil is in the details, and it was tricky, but nevertheless, we wanted protection for people, in a perfect world.
Yeah, I did have a chance to connect with Barbara Burke at Favela on the topic as well. She was responsible for driving the program back in that time frame. The purple was given to offer flexibility and almost put the responsibility back on the planning board. They did pick specific points, but then they basically tracked a elevation. So I've talked a number of times that I would rather have a number, right? I would rather have don't put it on the planning board. We got enough other stuff to deal with. It'd be nice to have a quantifiable number. And they did shoot it that way. So they shot it from the lake at a normal height person, shooting the topography with the topography in place. So it can't take into consideration bushes, houses, things that might be between the lake and that point in the lake, because somebody could come and clear that at any point. So they were trying to give flexibility. I would have rather not had the flexibility at the time, but there is math there at least that says if we shoot it, that elevation, and I use a conversation related to Lakeview Estates, I think it is, just north of where I'm at. I said, geez, from the other side of the lake, I can't see that. Well, the reason for that is because those structures are low. So it has nothing to do with the land. If we put 25-foot, 30-foot structures down there, you'd see them. As a manufactured home, it falls below. So it's just, but they could give us science to do it. They just intentionally just.
Someday we may have science to do it, but for the time being, we have the purple map. And I think the purple map is restrictive enough that we as the town planning board can hold an applicant to it. And he does have an appeal procedure if he'd like to go through the science and the cost of doing that, prove that it's not within the viewshed. That's his prerogative. He can make his appeal to the planning board and we can hear him out.
That's right.
But in the meantime, we follow.
Well, I think the point, going back to the goal, is that,
Much better where we at.
sorry, if they're looking to build in something that's in your purple, you can say, well, you know, it'd be a heck of a lot easier if you built in an MUO. You know, that's the whole kind of point of the goal is have you thought about up here?
Unfortunately, there are MUOs that are purple.
Yes, that too.
Just for a point of clarification, you correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe that there's an exception if someone were to go out and shoot the elevation from the lake and say, well, you can't see it from there. I don't believe that the ordinance, the way it's currently written, allows that. I think it just says anything in the purple, south of 5 and 20, has to have a 1 acre minimum lot size. And we did that specifically because, as Doug mentioned earlier, someone could come in with 20 developable acres and say, I'm going to build, I'm allowed to build 40 houses on those 20 acres and I'm gonna give it back 10. Well, that means we'd have a cluster development of homes, 40 homes on 1/4 acre lots. And we had a lot of conversation about this at the ordinance committee. So our goal was to make it difficult for people to develop high density neighborhoods south of 5 and 20.
So that's good.
Did I say that?
That's excellent.
Because part of the challenge that we're dealing with in a project is that it's interpretation of how much of it is in that or not, for example. Right?
How much is in the purple?
So much.
But your answer to 5 and 20, south of 5 and 20, adds clarification to that. As intent.
I think it's good discussion. I'm ready to move on.
Well, let me just also add here under goal number 3, we're also working, we actually had an ordinance committee this morning. John Casey is the chair of our ordinance committee. We had a discussion this morning and the ordinance committee is advancing a proposed local law relative to subdivision. And specifically in areas that tend to be more rural or maybe a little bit more environmentally sensitive along private right of ways and how those are treated and kind of essentially says, the gist of it is, if you are along a fire, actually, this gets to the interpretation application that I filed, that I can now withdraw because the thing changed, but anyway. But we had this example, and this is really what kind of perpetuated some of this. We had somebody that was trying to subdivide a parcel along a private right of way. And in that particular case, they did not have specifically adjoining easement access. So this really clarifies two things. It clarifies you can subdivide no greater than 3 parcels along a private way, adjoining a private right of way. The minute you get to the 4th, then you have to go to a major subdivision, which includes bringing the road, a right of way up to public standards. It also clarifies the points of the code. The planning board has the authority to waive in this particular case the site design and design and development criteria as the name of it. So.
Goal 4, support the development of affordable housing options and affordable transportation options for the local workforce. I think the number one takeaway with this is our affordable housing team committee, which is growing and growing. It seems every meeting there's more attendees, kind of bringing to light that this is an issue, not only in the town. The county has a new task force, affordable housing task force. And as a goal, I think this is just going to be ongoing dialogue.
I think one thing we forget about in this goal sometimes is the transportation section of it. And I mean, I think we could still do some more work with buses, but don't forget that part of that transportation can be multimodal transportation, sidewalk networks, trail networks, things that allow people to get where they're going on their feet or with their bicycle. I think that's also something we need to pay attention to, because right now is not the easiest time to build anything affordable of any kind.
If I could just be back on what I was saying, so the goal itself, I think that the reason the county has an affordable housing team is because the town had the affordable housing team that really was pushing and saying that there's an issue here that needs broader support and broader look. But the transportation piece, I know while our team talks about it, again, those of you on the planning board specifically, when you're looking at a denser housing development, like apartments or something like that, please think about the end user, whether it's the kids that have to get the bus to go to school, or whether it's somebody that's going to need public transportation because they don't have a car, they can't afford a car themselves. We really should be thinking about shelters, requiring those. I know that we have some conversation about that in the past. We have that in some locations over on Creekview on County Road 10. When we're thinking about those as well as the multimodal stuff, the sidewalks, bicycle lanes, all that stuff, we really need to be thinking about that in terms of when the application's coming in. When we talk about Uptown Landing and the tremendous density there, we need to, I know it's crazy to think, but you almost have to start thinking about the future of that being a small city itself. And you have to start thinking about parking garages and all of those different components in the future and what that'll look like there, as opposed to the ruralness. When we talk about the diversity that we love about Canandaigua, this is a perfect example, right? We're talking about rural in one sense and agriculture, and then we're talking about a small city in another section. It's all still in the town of Canandaigua. But these initiatives like the busing and the affordable housing, let me tell you, I just a couple of months ago here, it was snowing out so hard one day. I stopped, there was an older lady walking on the side of the road with a grocery bag, and I stopped to give her a ride to where she was going, town Canandaigua resident. She rides the CATS bus and will only take her so far, and then she has to walk the rest of the way to her house. Those are the types of things we have to constantly be aware of. There is a real need in the town of Canandaigua, even though we don't think about it sometimes, and things like these bus stops and these shelters, they need to be incorporated in the design elements of the plans up front. All right, I get up my soapbox, sorry guys.
Can't that be built into, I mean, we're learning so much about form-based code right now. Can't that be built into a checklist that already, whoever that developer is gets it ahead of time?
Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Or even in the site design criteria, would be an easy way to put that in there.
I know that, just a small example, bike parking is part of, so many spaces for are required, but absolutely, I think you could incorporate those shelters.
Is the town doing anything right now to seek subsidies towards affordable housing at all? Or is that up to?
If I can interject, the county's applying for part of the state and federal programs. Personally, I think it's large, a town doing it would be very effective since it's such a large problem and it affects across the boundaries, crosses town borders, city borders, everything. It's really the county doing it. So the county is looking at that, trying to get ahead of the game to bring some of that money the governor just released not too long ago.
Just the reason that I asked the question is I think the level of affordable housing and market price is a problem in our community. So if there's not an incentive, then I don't know how we ever achieve it of some kind. So it's the developers are into doing it because they're a for-profit entity. So they would start, they could build it and they might get incentivized to build it, but to get it to stay that way, market price will adjust if something's not done.
And it's so expensive to build anything right now. It's very hard.
Well, and John and I have had this conversation when I talk about economic development a little bit differently. I think about it as a ladder, right? First is a place, second is infrastructure. Because you're not going to get anywhere else on that ladder if you don't have good infrastructure in place. Third, when you talk about the ladder of success in economic development. Third, you're talking about housing, good housing stock, affordable housing stock. Fourth, you're talking about workforce, and so forth and so on. But Mark, to your point, it's if a developer's got to come in and build a building plus spend $1 million on a sewer or something, they're going to the next down the turnpike, right? They're going on to look and see what else is going on. That's where we constantly have to be evaluating our own infrastructure. Good news is we have more, truthfully, than anybody else in this area that I know of in terms of the analysis already done, sewer master plan, water master plan. We have an understanding of all that, and Terry leads all those efforts on the Public Works Committee. But because we also know that, we also know we have problems. We know that we have flat sewer lines that have got to be fixed. We know we have pump stations. We know all this type of stuff. And we have to continuously invest in that, which will also help to track some of these other opportunities.
Let's go to 5. Conversation, invest in construction of roads, sidewalks, and bike lanes. This absolutely relates to multimodal complete streets, which is at the forefront of everything that the planning board looks at this point. Complete streets are a requirement. And I know Chuck, do you want to? I know that's near and dear to your heart.
Yeah, one of the primary responsibilities we had in the comp plan regarding the planning board was reviewing the site design criteria zoning code to eliminate impediments, alternative transportation, including biking and intermodal ways of getting around the town. And Shauna and Lance and I are going back and we're updating the 2018 version of our site design criteria manual and making sure that primarily there are no impediments in there that would preclude any type of use of bike lanes and trails and other ways of getting around more than just the traditional car vehicle. And also looking at other ways of getting around. We also are looking at a revisit of all the criteria in that manual, including all the standards to make sure if there's been any new and improved ways of building, constructing, designing, providing for different types of infrastructures, that we've accounted for that. Jim Fletcher has been giving us ideas in terms of there's new and improved water meter systems and different things that we should include in our standards now that he would like to see used in lieu of what we've used in the past. So yes, that's what we're doing. So we're working, or at least that group's working hard on putting that package together.
I have a question to your point. Is the town investing in these roads and sidewalks and bike lanes? Or are we encouraging and motivating others to invest in the roads and sidewalks and bike lanes?
This could be either or. Obviously, if developers coming in, we want to make sure that they're built to compliance to provide for it.
So that is a minor point, but should this then say invest and encourage in the construction and development of roads, sidewalks and bike lanes?
Well, one thing, at our last get together, I asked Jim Fletcher, I said, do you mind if we sat down and came up with like a highway master plan? Give us an idea of what roads we should be focusing on in terms of which streets, linkages that we have. Because right now it's sort of something comes in and it's sort of spur of the moment, a decision is made. Yeah, it'd be good to have it. There's no long range planning involved in that. And I didn't get too much pushback, Jim. So I think that's.
Jim uses a program from Cornell to evaluate the road system.
That's to evaluate the condition of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that, I mean, it's all tied together. Investing in the construction of roads, we invest every year in the maintenance of roads. We don't really construct the road, although there have been times when the town has done that. So this may not, to John's point, may not be worded exactly the way that.
And as a follow-up question, I know we have been spending money and we've had conversation about this on a regular basis to maintain or improve the roads. But are we doing anything greater in 2022 and any plans to invest more in 2023 than we have been investing? And it's just, again, I don't mean to nitpick, but this does say invest in the construction of roads. So that means that the town is actually spending money doing this. And if we're then spending, just pick a number for illustration, $100,000 a year on maintaining roads, or are we investing more than that now?
So,
or to Chuck's earlier point, are we encouraging the developers that when they come into the planning board, that they have complete street type construction on the plans?
So John, I think it has to be all of the above, right?
So then should we change this, modify this language slightly? Do you say?
So let's talk about the town's investment. So let me just share with you. So the town is invested in 2022, as in 2020, 21, 22, and will in 23. In the one and only, once it's completed, complete street in the town of Canandaigua, that will be the Canandaigua Farmington Town Line. That's the only one. No other street in the town of Canandaigua is a complete street. Now, that's not to knock, we don't want every street in the town of Canandaigua to be a complete street. There are many rural roads that we do not want as complete streets, right? So it's those areas that are most specific, right? We have also, we're in the process of making an application right now for North Road. That has been an 8-year journey and trying to invest in bringing that up to make that a complete street with sidewalk that goes from essentially 332 to Canandaigua Academy. What we run into a lot of times with all of this are easement issues. That's why, again, I'm gonna ask planning board, I need your help on so much of this stuff to actually implement these plans. Please, not only ask for the easement, ask for the sidewalk, right, on these projects, right? We have, I have to tell you, I was sharing this story recently. I was with a representative from the Department of State, taking him around the town of Canandaigua recently, and took him into the villas. And the first thing that she said to me is, I can't believe you let them build this without sidewalks. We go into Fox Ridge. Doug, there's still no sidewalks. We have Fox Ridge HOA meeting every single year. The first thing they always ask us, when can we get sidewalks? Now here we built a whole housing development with no sidewalks. Even these next phases, right? We've asked for easements, but no sidewalks. County Road 10, we actually required sidewalks in phase 1. We knew that there was going to be a connection point, Chuck, and I'll take the blame partially for this, right? The developer was squealing like crazy. We can't afford to put the sidewalk in all the way down to connect it until we get to phase 2. Okay, well, just put the sidewalk in when you get to phase 2. Well, it's still a stone dust out there because they haven't gotten to phase 2 yet, right? So it's a combination. We have to invest and the developer has to invest, but we also can't let the developer get away with it, especially in these dense areas in uptown and where we're envisioning the sidewalks. Liberty Apartments, which is the Veterans Apartments, 48 unit apartment. DePaul Trolley Station, both fantastic causes. They both screamed. They were so upset that we made them put sidewalks in, right? The sidewalk to nowhere. That was the big motto. That was the signs. The sidewalk to nowhere. Guess what? Now it's all connected to uptown. It's got to start somewhere. You guys got to help us with this. It's got to be an all in everything to make this happen.
Well, and to your earlier point, that even dating back to the Complete Streets Committee, a highway master plan would be very helpful. So we know a plan for when things are going to be coming up, and they can be evaluated if there's a need for bike lanes, for example, or simply a wider shoulder or a sidewalk. You know, you look at something like Outhouse Road, which now literally has the world's largest playground on two sides of it, and Happiness House, and it's not a complete street. And it very much should be evaluated for the next time we're going to work on that to be our next complete street.
And to help us do what Doug wants to do, if we have a master plan showing where sidewalks should be or going to be, we can require a developer, look at our master plan, or, you know, it forecasts sidewalks to be in this area in the future. So you're gonna do this tie up here, okay, maybe we have a vacant lot in between, but we'll catch that person some other time.
So what's the easiest way to do that? Make a map that literally says we want sidewalks to connect here, here, and here? What's the best way to do that?
Well, we have a hierarchy of streets, collective streets, subdivision streets. And I think what we do is designate or delineate each one of those streets on a map, and maybe we already have it. Jim might have it. I don't know if he does it by this kind of classification, but then you look at each one of those classifications, say, okay, this is a collector street that in the future would be very nice to connect and provide bike lanes. And maybe we don't do a complete street. We do a sub-complete.
Right.
Like at least provide something more than what we have now in terms of
It always comes down to money, of course. I know that we talked many times about highway master plan in terms of replacement and maintenance over time. And that program that Jim uses to evaluate every year the condition of the road so that he can determine which ones to oil stone or micro pave, whatever he's going to do. You know, he uses that to guide him which ones to pick. This year, several of the roads that he was going to work on, he can't, because the price of oil is shot up. And also because in the interim, we discovered that Weifels Road from Acorn Hill up to Middle Cheshire Road is failing miserably, that it was never built to a standard that would hold up over time. So a big chunk of the money, I don't know how much it was this year, a couple $1 million, we're going to use to do some other roads now has to be funneled into that effort. He estimated at one time, this was a couple of years ago, that to bring everything up above the 50% mark, this program uses as below 50, scores below at 50, then you should think of replacing it. The estimate a few years ago was $12 to $14 million to do that, which is greater than our annual budget here for highway and general and water. So, you know, without some kind of magic ARPA money or, you know, printing by the federal government or something like that, we can't print our own. So, you know, we're going to have to be grant money or plant some money trees or something in order to come up with, you know, the funds to do that, to bring everything up to a standard. And that's not also adding sidewalks like my daughter. That's just what we have now, to bring it up to a standard that is reliable, you know, transportation. So, you know, that's just a fact of life, the way it is.
But again, in terms of hammer on the developer, if we have some way of showing to him that we do have a plan here, folks, we want to get from here to there, then you're part of it. And you've got to provide at your cost, the developer's cost.
Yeah, well, you should.
The sidewalks to
make it a condition of
to help with that link, so.
Right, we do that with Auburn Trail right now. Absolutely.
You know, we actually have a map that was done. It's what we call the sewer envisionment. Maybe we have something like that for sidewalk envisionment. These are the types of areas where we would envision sidewalks. And I would think we could do that pretty simply.
Would we
could probably
adopt
do
that?
In-house and then adopt that. We can work with public works. Sure. To identify those areas. We also have, this will be a good time too. We have something brand new, our Uptown Business Improvement District. That, and we have a meeting here, the town board will meet later this month as the Uptown Business Improvement District. But I would envision, excuse me, as part of the Uptown plan that we adopted, the Uptown Business Improvement District will be able to take on maintenance responsibility and help with some sidewalks and everything in Uptown. As we get into different things like lights and banners and landscaping and making it look pretty and everything in Uptown, that cost would be more and more about the business district than the taxpayers of the town. So that's something new for us that we'll talk more about in the future.
Which will add to the cost of everything going on up there, that will make the housing less affordable. Yeah.
Absolutely. Circle.
Everyone take a few moments while these refresh to go through your report card here. You don't need to put your name.
Are there other issues though that the zoning board is running into that you'd like to bring up, or planning board? Is there things that we should be thinking about while we have everybody here? I know you'd like to see less of me.
Doug, I will say that as part of our annual report to the board last year, we sort of, the planning board made a commitment to work on some projects that we felt were important in terms of moving forward from a planning aspect. I mentioned the site design criteria, which I've sort of been carrying the ball on that. And then there was an interest that Bob had, and say more. Our former board member. Gary, golly, senior moment. That Gary had regarding the solar law in terms of looking at that and possibly tweaking it, but it's gone beyond the tweak. It's now getting to be a major project, but Bob's sort of carrying the ball on that, and eventually it'll lead to some sort of draft coming out of the planning board. They'll go to the ordinance committee and hopefully go further than that to town board at some point. Scott is working on looking at the 5G technology and how that will be deployed. I guess concerns are from a plan aspect, what kind of aesthetic concerns do we have regarding these boxes, these red boxes on tops of poles, and to provide for the 5G. Is that the intent of the utility companies to use that type of technology, or is there something different? And what kind of controls, if any, would we like to have within our means? I realize with cell towers and this kind of thing, we are limited to what we can control, but at least we don't want a proliferation of ugly looking red boxes.
Just got one ready. We have Acustos Technologies, which was just named the world's largest new 5G technology company just last week. And that's in the town of Canandaigua, so we should probably have some conversations about that. So,
I know you met with Verizon, you and Sean had a good meeting on that. And then Mark's been carrying the ball on the EV, the electric vehicle and the charging stations, and what kind of effect they would have regarding plan aspects, parking lots, where they're to be provided, how they're to be provided, how they're to be energized. And he's going to be making a presentation next Tuesday to the planning board on what he's found so far. So he's working on that. And Amanda has a strong concern and desire to look at the affordable and moderate housing project, and she's been bird dogging with the Affordable Housing Committee, and so she's working forward on that. So all these projects, initiatives will come to some fruition eventually, and we'll continue to work on that as time allows and discuss it at meeting as time allows.
Zoning board? I think we're pretty good right now. Once we get through your this next meeting.
I agree, for those of you that don't know, right, there was recently filed 2 interpretation applications to the zoning board for an interpretation of the planning code itself. There's some of that stuff, the ordinance committee is also, I think, working through trying to clear up some of the language that hopefully will help us. Is there anything that you need from a zoning board perspective that you feel like would be beneficial?
No, I mean, there's been adjustments to the zoning laws, I think, as some of these things have gone on. So I think that's been helpful for us. Looking at the very small properties like over in Sandy Beach and allowing us to have different requirements for those types of properties compared to larger properties. I think that, I think staying ahead of that fairly well. If we run into something, we'll let you know.
Adeline, how's the relationship between ECB and the planning board? I mean, I know you've been doing reviews. You've been reading Kim's minutes. She does a great job of providing us with what your adjudication applications are. We have it in our files, a copy of the ECB comments, and I think we seriously look at them in terms of our review and in terms of consideration. But anything else that?
Well,
we can
as
be
a
doing?
facilitator for the ECB and a new member on the ECB, if there's ways that we can communicate better, anything with either of the boards, that's something that we would love to see the ability to do. We brought up, and Kim, please speak up, but we just had a meeting last week and we were trying to go through some things that were important to our committee. We would love to engage on solar issues, to also help identify multimodal transportation routes and work with anybody on identifying potential future PDRs. Those were, what am I missing, Kimberly? So.
Sandy Beach.
Well, and Sandy Beach ordinances, yes, that was one as
I
well.
think we were talking a lot about street setbacks.
Stream setbacks, yes, yes, and lakefront development in general, so. Including Sandy Beach, so.
Keep the excellent reviews.
We have a lot of new board members, including myself on the ECB, so we're trying to train a little bit with one another and get a feel where we can learn from prior members, what's the best way to communicate. But yeah, if you've got a way that we're communicating that's not.
No, I like the way you assign a member of the committee to
Yeah.
sort of present the application. That's good.
Is there, Adeline and I had this conversation recently, if I pick on you for a second, Adeline. So like Adeline came to us on the town board years on the Parks and Rec committee, so she had a lot of experience in Parks and Rec committee, but wasn't as involved like in project review and those types of things. And one of the things that I often forget, and we've got a fair number of new faces around the room here this evening within the last year or so. Do we need more training on specific areas or even on the resources that are available to you to make a decision on some of the things? Like Mark and I were talking about the open space thing and then the indexing and even going through some of that. Are there things that you feel like would be beneficial if we could focus on or help you with some of that stuff, I guess?
I will say the training day that was done here, real new, but at that point, I don't even know if I was voted in yet.
I think, yeah, it was in the works.
Yeah. The presentation you and Shauna did, that was for form-based code or whatever, but you started off in that room, you started off at the very high level. Here's the overall plan, you talked about the comprehensive plan, I didn't go and print it off. And actually read through it. Just that kind of training would be immensely helpful. Just, here's where we're going. Here's our starting point, our plan. Here's why we have all the different boards. Here's what each one is responsible for. Here's why we started committees. Here's what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
Just kind of pulling all of those pieces.
Executive summary kind of thing.
Yeah, pulling all those pieces together about our town and our specific objectives is helpful.
What would be useful for the objectives, if there was a listing of the various plans or committees that might relate to those specific objectives. If you're listing, you've got your goal, for example, the first goal 1, you could indicate, strategic view shed overlay, ag committee, different areas that might actually help you identify how to implement that goal, so.
We do have that in the council.
Actually,
But it just, it kind of.
In the comp plan, yeah, but I mean,
But it,
yes, no, I know
I know.
this, but I mean, like,
But
when
that's-
you're actually making the strategic goals, if we're doing, which just feels like it's kind of new from last year. But it might be nice to just, you know, boom, 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 see X, Y, and Z regarding this goal, so.
the other thing, just some of you may not be aware, Chuck alluded to it earlier, the planning board is actually required by town code to provide an update each year to the town board. We'll do a report, it's usually done in July.
Well, July, it might be September.
You did a little late.
The ECB is also required by December to do one. And so those reports are things relative to Scenic Chapter.
Some of the new ECB members, I think are looking for a little bit more basic training, probably plans related to some of the resources that are available in the town. So, if something like that, I think they would really respond to it.
And I do think people would benefit from, one of the things they brought up on that training day too was the Encore gal that was here mentioning that she could do some Encore training. I think a lot of us know basics of Encore, but a lot of us don't know. I mean, if we sit with one of you, you're going into things that we never even knew were there before. So, and I think just having a little Encore training.
That would, I can do that, but next ECB, we could absolutely, that's easy to do.
But I think more than just the ECB, I mean, I don't know if I'm the only one, but I think there might be some other people that could benefit from some Encore training, so.
I'm gonna go out on a limb right here. I'd like to see us do more relative to strategic planning. I'm thinking about the vision of Canandaigua and where we're going in the future. I don't think we, in general, have enough conversation about that. I was hoping there'd be more of that type of conversation at the LDC, but we don't. And I think that would be helpful. So, you know, to open this meeting, we asked what was good about Canada. We all share the same sentiments, but it might have been helpful to ask, where can we use some efforts? What can we do to help make Canada even better than it is today? Or what do we need to be prepared for into the future? What's the vision of what's going to happen? Because my perspective is, we're talking about growth, and that's a good thing. I think we all need to continue to grow in order to be the best you can be. I think when you start to contract and get smaller, I think that's when you start having challenges. As long as you continue to grow, I think that's good. But as we continue to grow, there are going to be some very significant challenges. And I think Terry mentioned a good one, you know, our roadways and our sewer systems and the maintenance of them and the upkeep of them. We're going to be facing some real tough financial questions relative to some of those things. And I think with growth and with more development in the uptown area, we're going to have some infrastructure issues. And when I say infrastructure, I mean all the infrastructure, you know, the storm, the sanitary, the electric, the water, the internet services, the transportation of getting people around and moving around. You know, one of the questions I ask now is, I don't know the Y is moving. And there were a lot of people that visited the Y that were living in downtown Canandaigua. Now, how are they going to get to the new Y out on North Road? You know, and some of those challenges are going to become even more paramount as we move forward. So I'd just like to see us have some good strategic conversations. And I think a lot of the people around this table come from a lot of different perspectives. And I think that would be good to do with a group such as this.
You know, what was great for that was the concept mapping plan that we did a few years ago. That worked very well for strategic planning, I thought. So.
I like thinking about that, and the kind of housing we have is going to be reflected in school enrollment. And so we could be seeing Canandaigua be reduced in size or continue. And Victor, of course, is going the other direction. The other one, which you can't help noticing, the hospital is in and all that it brings, they're going to need even more room for expansion. You'd have to guess in the future.
In a whole business district, and the
Yeah.
commercial growth that the city is going to be experiencing and the town is going to be experiencing. And where do we put all the cars? Where does everybody park? We got to get the cars off the street and we got to put them someplace. And so
Is there data on the average age or that kind of thing in town? Are we going in a certain direction?
Yes.
Oh, we're definitely going a certain
That was my
direction.
guess.
By far.
We're getting 1 foot
You're
closer every day.
Yeah, okay. All righty.
We do, that area around the hospital, actually, there's a plan that we did a couple of years for the Middle Chester Road and healthcare corridor. That includes that area, but you're spot on. The plan actually calls for almost like a micro growth node around the hospital.
Yeah.
It's a combination city town, healthcare services, senior housing, any number of different elements relative to that. Doctors' offices, all of those types of healthcare related services for that corridor. Our zoning, when we talk about zoning, it's like back when we first started Uptown, everybody always kept saying, right, we don't want any more car dealerships. We don't want more car dealerships. Well, the absence of a plan equals car dealerships, right? Well, in the exact opposite here, if we don't change our zoning to get to that thing that we want to see happen, healthcare services, it's not going to happen. And that was the whole thing about Uptown and the feasibility study that we did, and then the form-based code, and then the next step, the business improvement district. We had a vision, we changed the code to meet the vision so that new stuff coming in is built to that vision. We've got to look at all the different areas of the town that we envision these things.
And that's another spot we gotta watch for multimodal transportation, because we're gonna have a lot of people who don't drive.
A lot of what you talk about with the hospital, that area, is kind of our medical center, the Parish Street,
That's true.
all in the city.
A lot of it, is the Earls and back towards Quail, that's all.
Yeah, but there's
The
the
hospital
city's cooperation.
Well, that's good.
that would help.
Yeah, that's good.
That's a big one.
Is any of the town property on the other side of 5 and 20 where they keep building those huge new buildings? Is there any property on the, what is that, the north side of 5 and 20?
There's just a driveway.
Okay.
That's all. Everything actually on the east side.
I'm like, I don't know if we're north or east.
The dentist.
The dentist is.
I knew the dentist is,
Yeah.
but I mean across the street from the
Right.
dentist. None of that is town.
Doug, or Sean, do you know if Hopewell or Gorham have the same rules for ridgeline that affects our lake? Or how do we kind of manage or help them?
Well, for years and years, the town of Gorham complained about the town of Canandaigua lack of ridgeline efforts, and so they were looking across the lake at development on the ridgeline. So it was very, very. That's Crystal Beach in that whole area. They used to get very upset. So they actually have some pretty strict regulations in the town of Gorham. Tom Harvey, who is the county planner, is also the chair of the town of Gorham Planning Board. And so they have some pretty strict regulations relative to setbacks, relative to water quality improvement, relative to, they have specific corridors that they allow to get developed going to the lake, but then even on a parcel, and then so much of it has to be green space. They have some very specific rules. Kind of Hopewell, I feel like was a lot more relaxed and just a lot more of a rural life atmosphere that they would just assume from every conversation when you jump in there with a conversation with their supervisor. I think they would like to stay rural, yeah. Definitely.
Seeing about the ridgeline up there by CMAC, up there, all wide open now. On top.
It's so quiet.
Are there ways that?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Well, I was gonna ask you, but are there ways the town board can support our enormous amount of volunteer hours that you all are putting in. Are there ways that we can help you all?
Tell them more money. More money for projects, more money for investment.
Well, quantifying some of these things would certainly help me in that process of being able to have data that absolutely aligns with what our comprehensive plan is. Because then it doesn't become a local, it doesn't become a meeting decision.
Agree. See engineer in us.
Yeah, that's right.
It is black and white. But there is a lot of gray sometimes. Always will be. And sometimes it's.
But that actually, I mean, bringing up Gorham and Hopewell, it makes terrific sense, figuring out how to align with them, because I kind of chuckled in talking with Barbara about how they did the survey. It was for the town of Canandaigua, so they only did it in the town of Canandaigua. I mean, they shot the topo from the lake, but the 6 or 8 points that they chose, I guess we're not supposed to look south.
You would think that.
Pay no attention to the man behind the
See those beautiful
curtain.
windmills down at the south end of the lake?
But I guess, I mean, related to that is trying to coordinate it. And it is so hard as a resident here and just listening to people. So often I get questioned on things that are more city than town. And as a result, that I'm either bad or really bad.
How'd you let that first teach?
Yes.
If they don't
They
think that
finish
restaurant
putting
is
it
great,
You'd think there'd be more linkage and more coordination, with some of the
yeah.
stream setback issues like that. But I know when the uniform docking and mooring law was put together, that took years. I can't remember, I think Jean was our representative. That was when she was zoning officer back in the early part of the century or. But that took 5 or 6 years to get that finally put together, so. We start talking about building height and lot dimensions and those kind of things. Tough to get that kind of cohesion.
One of the things that we were successful with that though is, and Jared's our representative on the Canandaigua Lake Watershed Council. The Canandaigua Lake Watershed Council a few years ago had formed some subcommittees to work on some very specific topics relative to Canandaigua Lake protection. One of the outcomes of that was our on-site wastewater treatment law that we have that says that all on-site wastewater systems have to be inspected upon transfer. That's something in our town code currently. Another outcome of that was the steep slope laws that we now have in place that are specifically in chapter 220-8 for steep slopes in the town of Canandaigua. All the municipalities were adopting something very similar. The other one is actually the building and the lot coverage requirements in the residential lake district, and specifically, and I know this is going to be a controversial topic, and I need to bring it up this late hour, but whether or not to use permeable pavers or not, that was all, that stuff came out of that subgroup that all municipalities right now that we're looking at. And so that was done. I don't know, maybe we could even have Kevin, maybe even get a lot.
Yeah, he was gonna be here tonight. Said something about it,
but those are the types of things where it is helpful if the municipalities around Canandaigua Lake are having at least a general conversation. You can't force any of the other municipalities to adopt something specific, but at least if everybody's kind of at least coming to the table and having a general conversation about what it is that everybody's trying to do, you're at least kind of generally swimming in the same direction.
Each one of them has something that's unique to them. I know the steep slopes in Middlesex had, rules and stuff in place long before we did. And really good. We modeled after them. I mean, Forum has, some, just talking about that. So there's, all the elements are there, but it's trying to put together. It's like trying to grab a handful of smoke.
You suggested this once a year, but the frequency is twice a year.
I would defer to all people's thoughts. We're gonna turn it to a broad look, more strategic. I don't know if we need to
break down all the components as such, maybe a broader discussion of what we're seeing as the boards and how we can each contribute to each other's success. You know, we did two, one with this format and the other one with another format, larger view goals, and then in 6 months do it that way. That's what people want. I want to add another.
We're coming up with a budget time too, and it's always very helpful once we really start to get into that. If we've identified the strategic objectives for the next year, so we can budget accordingly. So that would really want exactly what you're saying, like 6 months from now, or maybe even one sooner this year, but as we get to the fall, we're in another like strategic initiative.
Yeah, if we did it, November.
Is that a good time to do that in September? Or would it be better if that were done earlier?
I think the summer, it would just be too hard.
It's hard in summer.
Yeah, it's early.
Yeah.
Mid-September is probably the earliest. we
Plus,
could
it's probably
functionally
most
do
likely
it.
booked. Like, I mean, honestly, we're probably not gonna get in there until September,
We can bump something.
not a bridal shower.
So a little bit more tactile on some of the projects. I'd be curious as to how, I mean, we get ECB notes. We've heard a couple of times now when projects come to planning, at least, that the town board looked at this and that everybody's always in favor. Nobody walks in and says, yeah, the town board looked at this and they shot it down. So that doesn't happen. Is there a way to, I mean, get some of that technical information? We get it from the committee groups. Is there a way to get that from all of the groups? I mean, that might be asking for too much, but just
As far as projects are concerned,
yeah.
they're not a whole lot of projects that come to the board, the town board, and if they're looking for a zoning change. But they're not a whole lot that are gonna come to us unless they've already filtered through you guys.
The form-based code will come to
They'll come to
you,
us.
about 5,000 square feet,
Yeah.
will come to you.
MUO, the MUOs, we have some say, that's why we were able to give an interpretation.
I'm not even
So,
asking for say, I'm asking for opinion.
Right.
Well, and we don't know the committees review anything before it gets to the planning board either, right? If something's adjoining parkland, for example, the park committee's not looking at it in particular, so that would be maybe the ECB identifying that issue, so. But I don't know, is it any, are there any other groups other than the ECB and the PRC and everything and the zoning law determination that happens before it gets to?
PRC, we just
PRC
a
flags.
long list of
Yeah,
referrals.
Absolutely, the referral list is extensive,
Yeah.
includes
And we
ag.
send them out. Now,
ECB.
Oh, that's
we
right,
don't
so
get
ag's-
replies.
Right.
I think it would be helpful though, maybe if you put that referral list on the web portal so that everybody knows who else has received it.
Sure, we can do that,
Just adding the checklist.
we can
So at
absolutely do
least you
that.
know, that way, Mark, you're looking at a project and you can see it was referred to Canada Watershed Council and you're looking at it, you don't see something back from Kevin Mulvaney, you can say, oh, did Kevin not comment on this?
Yeah.
Or did he, at least you know, right?
Well, John's minutes of the PRC, he's got the referrals for each application.
Yeah, absolutely.
Again, the problem is getting responses back from
I mean,
everybody.
when I did them from the fire department side and Fishers, I would respond, no comment. I had no comment.
Right,
Just so they know I didn't ignore it.
that's hit and miss with Cheshire and the city and.
But just there, I mean, we had a conversation recently on school district. We got a lot of things that are going back to school district. I've yet to see a comment from school district at all on anything.
But I can tell you on the referral checklist, they do get them.
Yeah.
I think though, one of the things that we do need to do in Germany can help us. We had to change the contact that they go to a couple of different times. And sometimes I think as people retire, maybe something's showing up in an office that it's not getting to go where it needs to go.
Yeah, tell me who it goes to.
Yeah, well,
I'll
But
make sure.
there is a
I'll
name
make sure
on
it's
that
changed.
checklist.
John Rendell,
Oh, you know?
yeah, I bet he does.
But on
John
the
on the spot.
checklist, there is.
He would
Hey,
know
John,
that.
find this obscure piece of information immediately.
No, but that's what he's
what
so
he
good
does.
at that. He's probably got it in the chat by now.
John might
Sorry,
be
John.
eating dinner right now.
That's a sigh, you might be napping.
Oh, wait, no, you just unmuted.
Oh, I'm here. I heard you.
know who it goes to, John, at this, from the school district? The PRC referral?
If the committee decides.
Yeah.
It's not John's call, it's.
No, who it goes to, not
Who the
if,
contact is.
Who the
if they
contact
change.
is.
who it goes to.
I'm sorry.
Specific person. They're wondering if the person might be.
But I think it's true. I mean, most of those are, and the ones that do get requested, a large number of them
Yeah.
never respond.
Right, absolutely.
I think too, at our next one, when we go through these again, even each group walking through your process. What happens when you see something? What's the process that you go through to help everybody kind of understand what everybody else does, how we can support any pitfalls you might have hit in the last 6 months, issues that you're seeing coming up over and over again, maybe a lack of communication or gaps like that that we could fill.
Well, that was my question. Does the board and Doug feel there's enough communication from the other boards? I know when you go through your agenda, it's usually crickets when it comes to chairman responses.
Yeah, and that's where it's a slippery slope too, because you're appointed and your job is to do your job. And there are limited times when we can chime in on that and give and when it comes to us for a verdict or decision. And it's that way on purpose. That's the part where it's, not every case, but I mean, if there, maybe some things, here's some projects that we've seen, here are just a couple red flags to make you aware of, here, just something like that, maybe might be helpful. But along with what Mark said, I mean, there are projects that we've had discussions on some, and you're still seeing them and just in different, different forms that the response was, well, the planning board said it to the town board, or the town board sent it to the planning board, so they obviously approved of it. But we didn't, it wasn't approved, it was, well, we'll just send it on because that's the next step in the process, where by sending it on, that was understood as tacit improvement, improving the process.
Such as a local law draft, something like that.
I'm just thinking of projects, I'm not thinking about local law draft, there's one right now that we had that discussion on. So,
Project or law?
Project, yeah.
It's kind of related a little bit to something I had said to Shauna, only speaking for myself on CBA, but if people have a comment that's could be troublesome in the file, what we read, whether it's from Kevin, whether it's from a neighbor, something, and they don't have an answer. To me, it's a loose end, and the application is really not complete. And I think what we want to model is a professional, profile, the way we do things. And if an application is incomplete, where something wasn't answered or whatever, then I'm not as inclined to be receptive to what they have to say. And I'm only speaking for myself with that concern.
Yeah, if I could just, I 100% agree with Bob. There have been many times where I looked at an application and I felt like it was incomplete, and I don't even know how it ever got to the board that it went to, because I feel like it was an incomplete application. I think that it's okay for you guys to, when you get something, if you don't feel like all the information is there, if you feel that way, I think that you should speak up at your meeting, say something to Sean, call her ahead of time, jump in. Enter that in. I think that that's absolutely appropriate, because I think, to your point, you're trying to make a decision based on as much factual data as you can. And so, I love the same that the zoning board uses, right? So you ask the applicant if they're comfortable closing the public hearing, they say yes or no, and you immediately, I think, say it's 62 days to render a decision, because at that point, they've completed their presentation to you, and that's a very judicial way to do it, right? And then you're saying, okay, we may deliberate on this tonight, we may give an answer tonight, but you may get to the point in the deliberation where you're not ready to give that answer right at that point. You still have that 62 days. planning board technically has the same thing based on when they complete seeker. So you're usually completing seeker. So the planning board does essentially the same thing, just a little different. The planning board is reviewing the application, but before seeker, once they adopt seeker, then they have 62 days to render that decision, or 60 days. Right?
Yeah.
So the planning board, what they do is they don't do seeker unless they're ready to move forward. So that's the very last step before they move forward. But at any point in time, the developer is going to be upset, the applicant may be upset, but if you feel like you still need more information to make that informed decision, I think you should not be intimidated or afraid to speak up and say that and kick it down the road another month or meeting or whatever.
Or we may not close the public hearing.
Right. And this is just an example, but with applicants for the ZBA, I always tell them, the board is gonna ask you if you spoke to your neighbor, because I know how important
Right.
that is for you.
Because the big thing with us is hardship and character of the neighborhood.
Right.
So there isn't just one Canandaigua. It depends, whereabouts, we are. And, but if Chris Jansen had some concerns and they weren't answered, I've got a problem.
Well, and in that though, you also have to understand the person that's reviewing it or the comments that they right? So Chris is reviewing it from a ICC. So the state of New York doesn't actually have a building code. They adopt the International Code Council's code, the ICC code. So Chris is very, very educated in terms of the International Code Council's code. And so Chris is reviewing a set of plans, documentation, whatever, primarily for that code, not necessarily for whether or not it's a good project, whether or not it fits with the planning documents of the town of Canandaigua. And in a lot of cases, there's no comments relative to the county code of the town of Canandaigua. It's relative to that building code, right? And so that's a lot of times where his comments are coming from, or from stormwater. He's also our MS4 coordinator, right? Or stormwater. The comments that you get from MRB, from Lance, right? Those are the comments relative to the engineering perspective. Jim's comments are traditionally water, road, infrastructure, those types of things. You hear a lot from Jim about like hammerheads or whether or not that's going to work or not work. And he's thinking about how it's going to be snow plowed and what it's going to do, and blah, 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 right, for all that stuff. And so it's really understanding where the information is coming from, right? But really, it's Shauna's determination and then ultimately the planning board, whether or not the application is in the general intent of the planning documents that have been adopted by the town board. Because you're not going to have a town board member tap on the shoulder and say, hey, I don't think this is in keeping with the plan. Now, maybe they might. But they're certainly not going to get anything in writing because they really can't even interfere with the process. If you, as like Jared was saying, you want to call them. I can tell you, I've walked into a developer's office and said, that's the worst plan I've ever seen in my life, but I will never put it in writing, right? So it's those types of conversations. So you can have those conversations, especially like they're better to have one-on-one or, that type of thing. But keep in mind, anything is also foilable that you're putting in writing.
Who needs my phone number?
Yeah.
Let's wrap it up.
We're good.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.